Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to ask all members and other in-person participants to consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent audio feedback incidents. Veuillez garder à l'esprit les mesures préventives en place pour protéger la...
Please bear in mind the preventive measures in place to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters.
Remember to colleagues only use the black approved earpiece. The former gray earpieces must no longer be used. And please remember to keep the earpiece away from all microphones at all times. When you are not using the earpiece, place it face down on the sticker, either to your left or to your right, which is there to ensure it is a safe distance away. Reminder that all committee comments should be addressed to the chair. Conformément à l'article 108.3G.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1083G, the committee resumes its study of Report 1, Arrive Can, referred to the committee on Monday, February 12th, 2024.
Our witness, appearing as an individual, Ms. Diane Daly. Now, colleagues, Ms. Daly will be offering us some personal and I think even at times difficult testimony today. It is my intention to have a smooth meeting. I do plan to take just a break after the second round, approximately 1 hour into the meeting for about 10 minutes. So without further ado, Ms. Daly, you have the floor, please. Over to you.
Before I begin, Chair, as you can see, I hit my head on a door this morning. I'm here to tell the truth, but I'm very concerned that if I tell the truth here, I'm going to lose my job. Good afternoon. I thank the committee for inviting me here as a guest to speak. I thank the Chair and Committee for the same time consideration whistleblower Alan Cutler was allotted during the sponsorship scandal. I never imagined I would be named in the House of Commons. I suspect this is why I've been invited here, and I'm happy to answer the committee's questions. I have been muzzled for some time now. I've been a public servant for nearly 20 years and currently serve as a supply team leader at Public Works in the Real Property Contracting Directorate. In December 2018, I was assigned to CBSA IT Services to assist with the procurement backlog, providing administrative support and learning the TBIP's IT professional services commodity. From December 2018 to July 2023, I have had no access to the CBSA, PSPC, or any other Government of Canada procurement systems. When I seconded to CBSA, PSPC automatically cancelled my contracting authority. CBSA knew I had no procurement authority. CBSA did not permit me access to the CBSA procurement system or contract documentation. Each department grants PGs the right to sign contracts on behalf of Canada, and this permission is revoked when they leave for another position. Without this permission, access to procurement systems and documentation is denied. No one from CBSA, PSPC, TBIPs, clients, or security has publicly clarified my lack of procurement authority, leading to public criticism and humiliation. My inability to speak out has been stymied by CBSA and PSPC security investigations. I resumed procurement contracting duties in July 2023 at PSPC. I went over to CBSA as a PG5, and I'm still a PG5. I did not receive a promotion. On April 17, 2024, Mr. Firth mentioned my name in the House of Commons. My great-grandfather was one of the men who cleared the land to build the Parliament of Canada. I did not meet with Mr. Firth in person and communicated virtually due to the pandemic. My role was administrative, coordinating information for various stakeholders. I do not recall discussing IT requirements with Mr. Firth. From 2020 to 2022, the issues of GC Strategy's very poor documentation, errors with submissions, and slow responses to resolution for the errors have been raised with TBIP's PSPC managers and the contractor by me and other CBSA staff. I did not provide advice on RFPs or technical requirements. Only CBSA IT experts could do that. If Mr. Firth sent me any information, I would have forwarded it to the CBSA IT experts. I had no access to draft RFPs, and I'm not an IT expert. Mr. Firth should look at the contracts he was awarded for the signature of the contracting authority who signed it. I did not sign any contracts. On December 7, 2023, I received an email from Michelle Lafleur, CBSA Security, to interview as an ArriveCan investigation witness. I was seeking medical support for a cancer diagnosis, so I declined the optional interview. On December 13th and 14th, my Director General insisted on meeting me and told me in an MS Teams meeting to give false testimony against my former bosses for CBSA's security interview. The PSP DG and Director offered to attend the security interview with me. During the meeting, my DG implicated the PSPC Deputy Minister and the CBSA President to pressure me further. I told them I had nothing negative to say about my former bosses. If I had witnessed any improprieties at CBSA, I would have reported them immediately to my director at CBSA or my Senior Director of Public Works. I would not have waited until I left CBSA. Reporting serious occurrences to the Government of Canada is a critical responsibility. I have permission to share with the committee to demonstrate where I reported a serious occurrence to the Government of Canada. In April 2016, a non-security cleared person from Ottawa Carleton Association for Persons with Developmental Disabilities, or OCAPDD, Tom Gillespie, went through the back door near the loading dock at the National Archives to strong-arm a signature from Charlene Cooney, a non-verbally developmentally disabled woman, to remove her community support services. This action caused the revocation of her provincial transfer funding from Rita Regional Centre and is against DSO policy. He did not sign in at the security desk at Tunney's Pasture. Tom and other archive staff asked Charlene to a separate room for an unscheduled meeting. In March 2016, Tom tried to have Charlene sign a letter to remove herself as an OCAPDD client due to her reaction to a dental infection. His boss, Lisa Summers, and the executive director of OCAPDD, David Ferguson, were refusing the support she needed and wanted the police to handle it. Charlene taped the meeting in March 2016. The previous year, Lisa Summers sent a male employee to Charlene's emergency medical appointment without permission when she was already there with her long-term worker known to the doctor. Dr. Levitin did not know Mike, but let him in. This resulted in Charlene losing her primary doctor. On April 6, 2016, Charlene fled towards the OC Transpo Transitway. The Ottawa Police told Charlene not to return to the National Archives program, confirming OCAPDD is not allowed to harass and intimidate people. I reported this incident to the Security Office at ESDC on July 25, 2016. The federal government has not responded to this day. When MCSS Ottawa received the report about the OCAPDD supervisor harassment of Charlene at the National Archives, OCAPDD and the Ontario Ministry of Community and Social Services revoked Charlene's Rita Regional funding, established with the Community Transfer Committee led by the late Dr. Bruce McCreary. Charlene received the attached funding for her care. When reported to David Remington, the acting ADM of MCSS and MCSS Ottawa, the ministry moved to protect OCAPDD, an agency that uses multiple law firms with your tax dollars to ensure that the top legal firms in Ottawa cannot be used to advocate for clients, while the former provincial government cut legal aid for clients who are mistreated in this way from care centres, agencies, and other not-for-profits. This legal aid cut occurred at the same time the province of Ontario closed the last institution for special needs persons. In Ontario, developmentally disabled persons can only access legal aid for matrimonial dissolution, adoption issues, tenant disputes, and criminal charges. These types of abuses toward this population by provincially funded not-for-profits are no longer covered by legal aid support in Ontario. Registered letters were sent to the current Premier of Ontario's office and the current Prime Minister's office. Neither office cared to reply or cared full stop. The DSO has never restored Charlene's community transfer funding and has not responded to passport funding application attempts, even though Rita Regional clients with transfer funding are equally entitled to passport funding for personal needs and programs, like Charlene's communications books. My former DG's escalating actions toward the CBSA, regarding the CBSA's security interview raised red flags. Like Charlene, I felt intimidated and needed a record of the conversation to protect myself. Like Charlene, investigations have rendered me unable to speak. Despite assurances from my DG and senior director that CBSA was not investigating me, ATIP records show PSPC began investigating me on December 11, 2023. Taxpayers should know that CBSA and PSPC are investigating me for alleged breaches of the CBSA and PSPC codes of conduct regarding procurement. I haven't had federal authorization to do procurement from December 2018 through July 2023. I am currently on administrative leave from Public Works. I believe this is because CBSA and Public Works did not get the negative narrative expected about two former bosses at CBSA in the January 15, 2024 security interview. My former DG was appointed DG of the new Professional Services Transformative Solutions sector on March 27, 2024, 2 weeks after I was placed on leave. This sector manages TBIPs. This promotion was likely approved by the Deputy Minister of PSPC. It should be noted the current PSPC Deputy Minister previously worked at CBSA between 2007 to 2016. Mark Weber, President of the Customs and Immigration Union, emphasizes the need for better protections against excessive discipline and abuses of authority. According to the policy on investigations, allegations must be filed by a manager from the employee's department. If an employee is called for a security interview, their direct manager should inform them, not a higher level official, as my former DG did. My senior union representative has stated twice they've never seen anything like this. Senior management and political employees pitting federal government workers against each other to create false allegations and divert investigations from TBIPS issues is akin to a malicious 911 call on a coworker. My job is under threat for what I saw, not what I did. No one wants me to speak about TBIPS. Ongoing Auditor General OGO investigations and reports of double dipping, contracting improprieties, and the political pressure on December 15, 2023 have made me realize why PWGSC is trying to keep the focus on CBSA's software application issue and away from PSPC TBIPs. PG6s and PG5s at PSPC signed or orchestrated the contracting processes for GC strategies which CBSA procurement staff were instructed to follow precisely. TBIPS is a PSPC mandatory tool for federal departments to purchase IT professional services like an online shopping catalog, Eaton's, where TBIPS team members pre-qualify contractors and companies like GC Strategies and place them into the government-wide purchasing catalog. No manager, DG, or minister in the federal government is permitted to buy IT pro services from any other source but this TBIPS design catalog. There may be exceptions unknown to me. On October 1st, 2020, I attended a meeting with the Senior Director of TBIPS, the Manager of TBIPS, and my CBSA Executive Director. I questioned the RFP and SAO processes as they were more complex than usual government procedures. The Senior Director of TBIPS stated it was common for TBIPS to advise clients to ask TBIPS suppliers for IT requirement suggestions. I'd never encountered this in the private sector or federal public service. Asking for policy or legal teams about the Senior Director's instructions would have been seen as insubordination. The PG6 of TBIPS trained me on the formatting of documents. She was the primary manager responsible for overseeing and approving these documents. Although I am not part of the CBSA IT department, I acted as a liaison, facilitating the flow of IT requests between CBSA IT, CBSA procurement, and PSPC TBIPS according to TBIPS instructions. My role involved filling out the necessary forms, but I did not have the authority to generate purchase requisitions, create contract documentation, spend money, or sign contracts. Taxpayers should know I was unaware TBIPS buying unit was housed where the TBIPS catalog is produced. I found this out in February 2024 through a Google search by several IT consultants. I believe the ArriveCAN app investigation has uncovered a more damning issue outside of ArriveCAN. It's called TBIPS at PSPC. I do not work at TBIPS. The PG6 manager of TBIPS oversaw my work at every stage. She trained me. If there were issues with my work, she would have informed me and my director, and she should have corrected me. CBSA procurement was also being guided by TBIPS, who were often signatures on the GC Strategies contracts. To quote my sister, who currently works in compliance, this TBIPS issue will escalate CBSA into a procurement pox affecting many more departments, ministers, and DGs throughout the government. It's a financial nightmare. The TBIPS tent should be dismantled and separated, with catalog vetting done independently. No PGs, especially active designated PGs, should be housed in the same vicinity, similar to how contract security operates separately from buyers. The appearance of direct conflict of interest is akin to having a mergers and acquisitions group in the same area as stockbrokers. There is a reason for the division of duties in an investment house. It's called insider training. CBSA and I had been reaching out to the manager and the team of TBIPS regarding ongoing problems with extremely poor documentation from GC Strategies since 2020. In spring 2022, the manager of the BTID DGO, The manager's administration officer and I met with the supply team leader responsible for the $25 million TBIPS RFP contract and her manager to discuss various issues regarding reoccurring poor documentation from GC Strategies, noting there had been no improvement in this matter over several years. Instead, the situation became worse. The manager of CBSA, BTID, DGO, and I asked if the RFP could be canceled and retendered, given the reporting of this information and the lack of resolution to the ongoing problems with paperwork from GC Strategies. TBIPS stated they could not delay awarding the contract to GC Strategies despite the information provided by our team. PSPC proceeded to award the contract to GC Strategies despite the reported issues with the supplier in the spring of 2022. The $25 million contract was signed by an authorized PG5 from the TBIPS team, not me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daly. Before I proceed, je veux vérifier.
I just want to make sure that interpretation French into English is functioning. No, I'm being told that it's not working, so can we please correct that issue? I think the French into English interpretation is up. Is it working now? No, it's not. It's working here.
While you suspend, Chair, perhaps I realize that the witness is reading from some notes, and I'm wondering if we can
Khalid,
get a copy.
Ms. Khalid, one thing at a time. I'm trying to get the translation fixed. I'm not suspending. I'm just turning to the clerk right now.
You just said
so
that you were going to suspend.
Just 1 second, please. What would you like?
I'm hearing like translation into French. And he's speaking.
Okay. So is this a question? This might be a problem with people who are online. So je vais parler en français.
So I will speak in French again. Those who are online on Zoom, can you hear me in English? Yes? Okay, Mr. Desjardins, okay. Okay, great. Okay, it's working.
I believe Ms. Daly is done now. I'm going to begin the first round.
Sorry, Chair.
Is this point of order, Ms.
Yes,
Kelly?
Chair, it is a point of order.
Yes.
If that's okay, Chair, I was just wondering, I know that Ms. Daly read off of notes, and I'm wondering if we can perhaps have copies distributed to the committee, as is the regular practice for every witness that comes before us to provide us their notes beforehand.
Thank you. As far as I know, Ms. Daly did not provide notes. If they had been provided, they would have been, as is customary, translated and sent out by the clerk. So while she might have been reading her notes, they were not provided to the committee beforehand. So turning now to Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And good afternoon, Ms. Daly. Thank you for your attendance. Very disturbing evidence. I would use that term numerous times to describe what you just shared with committee. You used terms such as speaking out, you were stymied, you were prevented from doing so, you were muzzled by senior management, political appointees, you were intimidated, you're frightened, you're scared, you're concerned about your job. This is the making of a Hollywood movie, but this is reality. This is Canada's professional public service and the Government of Canada conducting themselves in a fashion to intimidate other public employees who do not toe the narrative. And I think that narrative that they're trying to describe is they're trying to distance themselves from GC Strategies. Trying to distance themselves from Christian Firth. We've had numerous meetings for the past year. We've heard from cabinet ministers who deny any and all responsibility. We've heard from the president of the CBSA, likewise, as well as the deputy minister for PSPC and other senior managers, all distancing themselves and laying all the blame on two individuals, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano. Is that your impression as well?
I never saw Mr. McDonald or Mr. Utano do anything nefarious. I would have
The question
reported it.
is it your impression from being within the CBSA and the PSPC
No, it's not my impression.
that these officials are trying to distance themselves?
I would say that's accurate.
You would say that's accurate. Who are these people, in your opinion? Who are these officials? Who are the senior managers and the political appointees? Name them, please.
You know, I'm going to these are the people that are likely going to get me fired, right?
Yes, but you're compelled to answer, Ms. Daly, as difficult as it is.
Okay. I have proof, evidence, both email and audio, to demonstrate that I've been intimidated by my former Director General.
Who's that?
Lisanne Bolduc,
Lisanne Bolduc.
Bolduc,
What was her position?
Director General,
For what?
Real Property Contracting,
Which department? Which ministry?
Public Works.
Public Works. Okay. Who else?
She and my senior director met, made me come to a meeting
Who's
on,
your senior director?
my apologies, Tom von Schoenberg.
Okay.
At that meeting, and I've got a transcript of the audio, if you would like me to quote one of the lines she stated.
Was it recorded on consent?
It was recorded because I felt I was being harassed and intimidated.
Do you still have that recording?
I do.
And you'll supply that recording to this committee?
I will.
Thank you. Go on.
Would it be okay if I cite one of the quotes from that meeting?
Certainly.
Okay, well, CBSA did contact us at the highest level of the department because their investigation is legitimate. And so it came down to us in terms of what we need to do as the procurement department in response to that. But I'm talking about you personally receiving threats of any nature, not in the context of normal business, which, like the CBSA did in reaching out to CBSA to PSPC, is normal, and it's expected in the context of their normal business. I'm talking to you about feeling threatened outside normal requests that would be related to your work. That was one of the 3 quotes I got cited on the tape about senior officials.
Okay, and this was a taped conversation between yourself and Lisanne Bolduc?
Lisanne Bolduc and Tom von Schoenberg on December the 15th.
Okay. What other senior managers, what other political appointees do you reference as being muzzled, that you reference that prevented you from speaking the truth? I want names and I want positions and departments, please.
Okay, so let me just ask the question. You're asking me to say who is preventing me from speaking the truth?
Yes.
Well, as far as Lisanne Bolduc, it was my deputy minister.
And who was that?
Ariane Riza.
Ariane?
Riza.
Riza. Can you give me an example?
I just could tell you what my Director General said to me. So you know, Diane, the matter is up to our deputy minister and their deputy minister. And the direction that I'm getting as a civil servant, and as you know, this is how it goes down, this is not an option. This is what we have to do.
And that deputy minister, Ms. Riza, obviously answers to the minister, the cabinet minister of the government of Canada.
She does.
Right. Okay. Is it your impression that cabinet ministers were aware of the intense pressure and intimidation that you felt to participate in this process?
I am going to refer back to one of the committee hearings that I've reviewed from the deputy minister, and she clearly states in that she didn't inform the minister until November. And I know the minister on November 28th took responsibility, well, what he knew of responsibility in the press.
Minister.
Minister Duclos, and I believe he has tried to do the right thing, but he wouldn't have known what was going on until at least the fall of 2023, because that's what Ms. Riza made comments to in her appearance before either OGO or
And
public
your-
accounts.
And your
Thank
opinion,
you
do
very
you do
much,
anything to
Mr.
rectify that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Brock. That is your time. We will, I'm sure, come back to you. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank Ms. Daly for making herself available to answer questions here today. Ms. Daly, you'll have to forgive me your opening remarks being very detailed. I'm not sure that I caught all of it, and I do hope that we will have the benefit of a printout of your remarks. And just in case, Chair, that not all of it was captured in the translation either. Ms. Daly, we have never met. Is that correct? No. Have you appeared before committee?
I've never appeared before any committee.
Okay. Have you met any members of Parliament on this topic?
No.
Okay. I did read some testimony from OGO from one of the meetings in 2023 where your name was mentioned. Maybe it was the first time. I'm not sure if it was.
Been Ms. Ratika Dutt on October 26th at OGO.
Okay. Can I ask you what your relationship was with those two people?
With Ratika Dutt?
Yes.
There was no relationship.
Okay.
Sorry, I do have to take water because of my medical condition.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I want to be clear, they were names on a resume that was forwarded to one of the project managers. Excuse me. And that project manager at CBSA did the evaluation, sent it back, and in my administrative role, I forwarded that on.
Okay. So did you have any conversation with this person?
No, I don't recall.
And are you familiar at all with, because she works for Bottler, or she has a company called Bottler?
She's a co-owner of Bottler AI. And what I do know is she was seeking payment for some of her 2 deliverables, I think it was, is what she said. My senior director asked me to make sure she got paid. I made sure that she got paid.
Okay, so the communication with the partner at Bottler came through your senior director?
The communication was submitted through email, and like any other director, they would ask their admin staff to look into it.
Okay. So
That was what I did.
So you never spoke to her directly?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. I think I'm going to circle back to that. Maybe we'll just start out then with, could you please elaborate on your role in the procurement process and what role Public Services and Procurement had in this process, particularly when it concerns, we're talking about the work that was done through Bottler and also the work for ArriveCan. Can you elaborate on your involvement?
Okay, well, I was a senior advisor in the Director General's Office of IT Services at CBSA. I had seconded over at level. I had no procurement access, and that I have proof of. I have no access to procurement in any way, shape, or form. CBSA had its own procurement team, and in fact, were recognized for putting in place a series of COVID-19 contracts for, I believe it was in 2021. The process was, you got requirements, we had a backlog, we'd take those requirements, we would package them up in the way that they told us, IT would give me those requirements, I would put them into a format to submit them to CBSA procurement through email, then they would generate a purchase requisition. That
And Ms. Daly, I'm going to stop you there. You understand that sometimes we have to interrupt
Sure.
to kind of get on with the questions. Did you meet with anyone in preparation for today's meeting? Anyone that would be working for any member of Parliament or anyone here at the House of Commons?
I am not allowed to talk to anyone because of the security investigations that are ongoing, because I spoke out and said not the negative narrative that they wanted, to accuse two former bosses of false allegations.
Okay. And can you just tell me, you've read the Auditor General's report, number 1 on ArriveCAN?
Yes,
You have read that. What was your takeaway from that report?
I would say that there are two things that the committee should know. In 2021, OPPO did a report on CBSA's procurement. In that report, in October 2020, the CBSA created something called the Contract Review Board to highlight a review of any and all impactful procurements. So what that should have flagged them was all of the steps necessary that the Auditor General identified, including project management, setting up more than one cost center for reporting, et cetera, that should have been easily done and should have followed that process, because that was what
What was the second thing?
the second thing was the way that Mr. Moore in the finance group made a statement that it was IT services that actually did the procurement. That was physically impossible.
Thank you. That is the time for Ms. Shanahan. Maintenant, c'est Madame Sinclair Desgagnés.
Now, Ms. Sinclair Degania, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Ms. Daly for her testimony, which was very interesting. So I will have many questions. I'll try to go quickly. First, you talked at multiple occasions about your former bosses who have silenced you, did not allow you to speak. And can you please provide the names once again?
Understand, I don't have the translation working on my ear, please.
On va arrêter
So
quelques...
we're going to suspend briefly.
Puis, Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, on va recommencer au début.
Ms. Sinclair Degania, we will take it from the top.
Non.
I apologize, Miss.
So you said in English, you're not hearing English when
No.
you speak?
Est-ce que ça...
Does it work now, Miss Daly? Can you hear me, Miss Daly? No, it's not working.
She can't hear the French channel. Could you hear it before when people were speaking French? No. Okay. We may need you to move.
Okay.
It might just be a earpiece challenge.
But she needs to
They're
hear.
checking right now. On vérifie présentement, Madame Sinclair.
We are looking into it, Miss Sinclair Degania.
Encore...
Okay, let's try this again, Miss Daly. Can you hear me? Can you hear me in English now? Does it work? Yes. You can hear me in English? Okay, great. Okay, Miss Sinclair Degania, you still have 6 minutes. Please take it from the top. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take it from the top. Ms. Daly, thank you for your testimony. It takes a lot of courage to be accusing one's former bosses. While you said that you felt muzzled, can you please tell us once again which one of your bosses, their names? I think I got Ms. Reza, but what are the other names of your previous bosses who muzzled you?
My former Director General, Lisanne Bolduc. My Senior Director, Tom von Schoenberg.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I have many questions. Well, on the one hand, we have heard from different people who brought your name up in different contexts. Mr. Dutt with Butler, or Mr. Firth in the House of Commons, who said that he was in communication with you. We also received at the Public Accounts Committee documents and emails that show that you participated actively to the procedure of procurement and the contracts that have to do with GC strategies. We have emails that you sent to Ms. Durrigan, that brought up questions about the attribution of contracts to GC Strategies. And in these emails, it looks like you insisted strongly that this contract take place. So did you do it on your own will, or were you asked to behave in this way? And if yes, who made the request?
The requests came down from the senior management team at CBSA. That is what I know.
Madame Dali?
Who exactly, Ms. Daly, when you say the senior management, who specifically?
It was communicated to me through my executive director that he was being instructed to go with GC Strategies. We didn't know who GC Strategies was.
Donc, Monsieur McDonald,
So Mr. McDonald was informed by someone else that he had to give it to GC Strategies. So is it Mr. McDonald who was asked to behave in this way?
et vous pensez que Monsieur McDonald
And do you think that Mr. McDonald received this instruction from someone else?
What I was informed of, I wasn't in the C-suite, so I don't know who would have instructed him. I was just a PG5 at mid-level, low-level employee doing what I was told to do.
Parfait.
Okay, great. But Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, as well as your colleague, Mr. Laparouan, knew about GC Strategies, and there would have been personal reasons maybe of wanting to give a contract to GC Strategies. They took part in whiskey tastings, they played golf, they were receiving gifts from GC Strategies, so they themselves might have wanted to give the contract to GC Strategies. Why do you think that this is an instruction that came from someone else and it wasn't themselves that wanted to give the contract to GC Strategies?
Well, I have a copy of what I found on the internet, which was an A-tip on Reddit. It's a 2022 A-tip. It clearly identifies that the decision for GC Strategies, which was made at the highest level, and I'm happy to provide that to the committee, it was made through one of the offices of the acting CFO, who said it came out of her office. So I'm not sure where this was generated from or how GC Strategies, which is a two-person company, was involved. But again, just a low-level employee doing her job.
quand vous insistez
When you were insistent in your emails on the fact that the contract should be given to GC Strategies, when you were insisting strongly and bringing forward arguments, did you at any point in time tell yourself, well, I'm doing something that is not correct? And was that the time when you decided to blow the whistle?
Aware of who GC Strategies was. I never met Christian Firth personally. It was COVID. I have a vulnerable woman who lives with me, and I didn't work outside of the home most of the time. I remained virtual for pretty much during COVID because I have people who depend on me, including a brother who is in the system in Ontario, who's a developmentally disabled autistic brother. So my ability to meet anyone or meet even suppliers was done online.
Excusez-moi, il y a dû avoir une incompréhension dans la question. Je vous demandais simplement si, au moment d'écrire les cours...
I apologize. What I'm asking is when you were sending your emails, 30th of March 2020, for instance, when you're insisting that the contract should be given to GC Strategies, did you tell yourself, well, I'm in the process of following orders which I do not agree with? Did you blow the whistle at that point in time, or did you decide to?
I was informed that in writing by Angela Durrigan that GC Strategies had to be a pre-qualified supplier on the TBIPS catalog. That TBIPS catalog is not determined by me, nor do I have access to it, including the fact that it's a two-person company. So any and all decisions were not mine to make. I had no access or no right to make decisions. Senior management at CBSA has a contract review board. They have a series of executives at CBSA at that time. They would have instructed, and as you know, this comes down like Lizanne said in her audio, it comes down, you are a soldier, you are to do as you're told. I'm a unionized member. For doing my job, and if I'd seen anything, I would have reported it. I didn't know who this pre-qualified supplier was. I want to make that very, very clear. I didn't decide. Angela Durgan confirmed they are a TBIP supplier. I've got in writing with me and can prove that Angela Durgan said, I'm getting ready to send the draft contract to GC Strategies in the time frame you're mentioning, Madame.
Et voilà. Merci beaucoup.
And that's it. Thank you very much. Up next.
Angela, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Ms. Daly, for being present for these questions today. What were your roles and responsibilities during your tenure at the CBSA?
I was a senior advisor in the IT group. My role was administrative. I was a facilitator back and forth between multiple stakeholders to get answers, to have people fill things out, and to put together packages for procurement requests, for privacy impact assessments. Anything that the DGO needed help with, I worked with other people who worked in the DGO, including their own finance person. The finance manager made sure the coding was fine. We would send that off to the CBSA procurement inbox, and we treated it just like we would anything else.
Have you ever communicated with any contractor using your or their personal emails or phone numbers?
I don't remember anything like that.
There's we have evidence submitted to this committee which references an email on November 11th to which you sent an email to a Coradix representative's personal email address. Do you recall the November 11th email?
I do not.
It stands to reason that we have the copy of the email that you did in fact have communicated with a contractor using your or their personal email addresses, however. Would you agree?
Anything is possible.
You were the former procurement manager for the CBSA where misconduct allegations from Bottler AI were brought to you. Is that correct?
Meant a manager of anything. I was not a procurement manager at CBSA, and I have proof of that.
Okay. You said, however, that your only role then, besides being a manager or not being a manager, is to pay Bottler. Is that correct?
I just made sure, as any administration, as any unionized employee is instructed to follow management's requests, this email came in to my direct report. I was a direct report to the executive director. What I've been accused of is incorrect. She had sent an email to him asking for payment for 2 deliverables. I have that in writing, by the way. And I just did the right thing. I just did the right thing. And I got her paid. I made sure that because people should be paid. Now, I want to give some context.
Did you refuse to take payment?
I don't remember I didn't know about Ratika Dutt until she got to the October 26th SOGO meeting, to be honest with you. To be very honest with you.
Even though there had been communications between Bottler AI and yourself?
Part of that was the payment. She thanked me for it, which I have evidence of. And I was instructed by the Human Resources branch at CBSA, because of COVID, they could no longer continue with the contract. Those were sent to the main contractor, not Ms. Ratika Dutt, who was not the main contractor.
Because that confuses me, but explain why you feel COVID is the reason why the contract didn't persist, when in fact it's been accused that Bottler attempted to erase these allegations with you, and the result of those allegations weren't an investigation. However, it was the termination of Bottler AI's contract, which seems to me like intimidation or retaliation at the very least.
Bottler never had a contract with us. They were a subcontractor. In other words, they had a separate agreement with, I believe it's GC Strategies. They themselves were not the contractor on record. Let's be very clear. So any business arrangement is outside the purview of any government of Canada employee to deal with them. I made that very clear in writing to
This
Ms.
is the problem, Ms. Daly, where Bottler you're saying that they were a subcontractor. How can you be a subcontractor without knowledge of being a subcontractor? When it came to light that Bottler was in fact a subcontractor through GC Strategies, they raised that concern with you directly. That concern via email constitutes a misconduct report according to the CBSA's policies. Why is it then that that misconduct report wasn't investigated by you or flagged for investigation?
First of all, it did not deal with misconduct. Let's be very clear. She had some personal issues with her relationship with, I think it was Coredex and GC Strategies, if I'm not mistaken. So to be clear, I offered to say, if you're not happy with this relationship, Miss Dutt, I'll be happy to contact Dalian and just tell them to remove you from the TA.
So you did have direct contact with these contractors.
He
Why
did.
would you say the opposite?
I didn't say the opposite.
I asked you at the very start, I said, have you ever communicated with any contractor using your or their personal email addresses or phone numbers?
Email addresses?
You said no.
I said I don't remember.
I gave you evidence of one.
Okay.
So how much don't you remember about the communications between these companies like GC Strategies and subcontractors that it seems to me you obviously had a relationship with these contractors so much to the extent
sir. No, I had no relationship, sir. No, sir, let me revisit what you said, okay? Let me just answer exactly what you said, what you asked me. Do I remember having communicated through a personal email with the supplier? Is that not correct?
That's correct, and you said no, and I gave you evidence.
I don't remember any, is what I said.
Okay, you don't remember. Fair enough. Let's go on now to a different issue, though. The fact that you did, in fact, speak to Christian Firth in the email regarding, you literally said in the email, I spoke with GC Strategies. This is on September 28th. And you wanted to be very clear with those
the right to be paid for the deliverables that they gave.
Just order.
But they weren't aware of the fact that they were a subcontractor.
Well, that's not my. That's a separate.
Ms. Daly, the time.
That's the misconduct we're talking about.
Mr. Desjardins, the time is more than expired. We'll have to come back to this.
Thank you, Chair.
You will have another opportunity. I'm going to begin the start of the second round. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Ms. Daly, your testimony today is explosive and brutal. You've compared this to the sponsorship scandal. You said that you've been muzzled and that you are at risk of being fired for your testimony. Why do you think that you are at risk of being fired by the Government of Canada for telling the truth to this committee? What exactly is motivating those who don't want you to speak about grave problems in this government's contracting practices?
First thing I was informed of when I was met with my former Director General, she said, oh no, Diane, they only want to talk to you as a witness. Then she went on to make the intimidation. She had been contacting me on a regular basis via MS Teams, via email, via, setting up separate meetings to sort of stalk me is the way it felt. I continued to go to work because I had done nothing wrong. But my name began going out in the press from the October 26th meeting at OGO. So when she said that the Deputy Minister of PSPC and the President of the CBSA were asking that I attend this meeting, and she said she and my senior director could attend if I wanted, so I wouldn't feel like a fish in a crocodile's mouth or something to that effect. That they wanted to ask me if I was being intimidated, threatened in any way, etc., which I told her, no, there was no threatening going on by the two individuals she was talking about, which were my two former bosses. I'd say quite... That would be Cameron McDonald, the Director General, and Antonio Utano, my senior director.
We're a bit tight for time, so just to kind of move our timeline a bit forward. So you're here today giving, I think, really explosive testimony before this accountability committee, and you're afraid that the things you say, the information you reveal, could result in you potentially being fired. What are the sort of present data points that are pointing you towards that conclusion?
Well, the two investigations, I wasn't supposed to be investigated. Now I'm being investigated by CBSA and Public Works. I have that in writing.
And fundamentally, that was the result, on your account, of you not giving the answers that they were looking for with respect to McDonald and Utano. They were looking in December, if I have the timeline right, December, for you to say certain things about them. You didn't, and subsequent to that, you were subject to investigation.
Yes, let me be clear. The December 7th email I received from Michelle Lafleur said it was an optional meeting. I was seeking medical support for my cancer diagnosis. Let's be very clear. I let them know that I was seeking support. I gave them a very fulsome statement. It was optional. When I said this to my Director General and when I said this to Tom von Schoenberg, they were like, well, you have no choice. It's coming from the top. We have our marching orders.
Right. So here's the timeline as I see it. November the 7th, Mr. McDonald and Utano appear before the Government Operations Committee. They give very critical testimony of the government. They do not support the line that this committee had been given by other senior officials. Later that month, they find out that they were being investigated. And in November, part of the testimony that we heard was that Minister Mendicino had been looking for someone's head on a plate. That's a direct quote. The Minister Mendicino was looking for someone's head on a plate in relation to the ArriveCan issue. So November 7th, they don't give the testimony that maybe other senior officials wanted them to, and then they are subject to further investigation, which they find out about later that month. You're ordered to go to an interview. You don't give the answers that maybe they were expecting, and then you find yourself also suspended, also under investigation. Then moving forward, we have the Auditor General's report, and the Auditor General's report says, among other things, in paragraph 156, that there was a case of GC Strategies being involved in developing requirements with officials. Christian Firth comes to this committee on March the 13th and refuses to say who that official was. But then on April 17th, he was ready to offer your name.
Chair?
So
just 1 second, Mr. Chairman. So I have a point of order from Ms. Shanahan.
Sorry to interrupt, Garnet, but you referred several times to this committee, people appearing before this committee, and I don't believe it was in front of this committee.
Yeah, that's more of a correction. I suppose, Ms. Genuous, you can take that under advisement, but I'll turn it back to you. You've got about 30 seconds, Ms. Genuous.
Thank you. I did misspeak that the March 13th testimony of Mr. Firth was before the Government Operations Committee. It wasn't before this committee. In any event, Ms. Daly, in this series of events, a number of people who have not supported the narrative that government officials and Minister Mendicino perhaps wanted are then subject to investigation. Why do you think Christian Firth specifically named you in the House on April 17th in relation to what the Auditor General said in paragraph 1.56? Why was the finger pointed at you?
Very good question. I don't know why Mr. Firth made that statement. I do not recall, and Mr. Firth knows this, that any conversation about IT requirements, but Mr. Firth would know that any IT requirements that I received, if I had received any, would have been forwarded to people who actually worked in IT because, again, I'm a procurement person. I have Geek Squad at home for residential help desk issues. I'm not the go-to for IT. Mr. Firth worked directly with CBSA IT staff on, I don't even know what they were doing. So let's be very clear. I could not and would not put together a package that didn't come from CBSA IT staff. I wouldn't know what to put in there.
Thank you very much.
The point then is
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Genuous, that is your time, Mr. Genuous. I'm sure we'll come back to you. Ms. Yip, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that you gave committee members reasonable notice regarding the timing of this meeting, especially after our colleagues on the Committee on the Status of Women were not afforded the same courtesy. Although I'm disappointed that we are meeting on an exceptional basis when the House is not in session, I just want to remind everyone that there was consensus during our last subcommittee meeting not to meet before September. So I hope that we are able to get back to our regular work reviewing the Auditor General's reports in the fall. That being said, here we are, all virtually and in person as well. And I'm glad that we have the chance to speak to Ms. Daly. So on that note, Ms. Daly, my first question is, why did the two Director Generals ask you to give false testimony?
The correction I should make is my former Director General and my senior director were at the meeting. So it's not two Director Generals, just to be clear. On December 15th, my Director General had been on vacation. She insisted with the title of the meeting called Meeting with CBSA. And I have in writing from an ATIP that they had started receiving information from CBSA in December 11th, I think it was. And they had asked that I attend this meeting because it was extremely important. It was on a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. She called me and told me I had no choice but to go. I went because it's my Director General. Again, mid-level to low-level employee here. And if you listen to the tape, which I'm going to provide a copy of because Mr. Brock asked for it, you will hear yourself that she says, "Oh, Diane, are you being threatened? Oh, do you feel intimidated?" So she said, "Well, we can attend that meeting with you, but you have to go. It's not an option."
So you have to go, but it's not the same as asking you to give false testimony. Is that right?
He said is they have created, and I can actually quote from the tape if you'd like.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, let me find that, and as I find that, you'll have to bear with me because it's several pages long.
Ms. Yip, if you're agreeable, I'll just stop the clock. I'll give Ms. Daly a few seconds to find it, but I'll stop the clock for you so it's not cutting into your time.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
So I do have that, Ms. Yip.
Go ahead, please.
The floor is yours, Ms. Daly, and Ms. Yip, you have about 2 minutes and 20 seconds left.
They're investigating two individuals, not you, within the organization. As part of the story, because you're involved, your name pops up many, many times, but there are not necessarily in some of the stories that they're developing. There's holes, and there's not necessarily documents that are associated to those holes. So they need, and unfortunately, you have an obligation to respond, and we'll get to how we're going to support you because we're going to have to respond. They will need to interview you and to fill in those gaps in information that they have in the store. Can I just say that? Yeah. And I say, so the information I have via email from CBSA clearly states it's an option. Why, really? Yes, so it's an option. So I said respectfully, I decline. Okay, I didn't know that. I have it in writing is what I replied to her. Okay, I'm very uncomfortable with who they are, and so my former DG and my former senior director or executive director at the CBSA, Antonio Utano and Cameron McDonald, who are at OGO, are honest, transparent, integrous people. I've worked with Cameron when he worked at Public Works, for instance. You can ask anyone who in real property he was. So I say about Ms. Dutt, in answer to a former committee member's question, this woman came to OGO with these things. I don't even remember her name. It was a name on a task authorization, by the way. And so this was a TA amongst many TAs, and that was in the Globe and Mail, was me asking for somebody who had already been paid to pay this person, which was perfectly fine. Tom and I discussed that, is what the DG said. So I reply, yeah, so I try and do the best by everybody. I'm telling you, I'm advised and I know that Mindone was known in the IT group. Mindone, I was told, by the way, I was told this, decided to go with GC Strategies. I don't know that for a fact, which I informed the CBSA of my email. And so I said, they asked me to reconsider, and I did not respond after I'd already made a fulsome statement. So the CBSA said, my DG said, as an option, you know what, Diane, I'm not going to argue with you. Would you be comfortable sharing the information? And she said, well, I think, first of all, I think it would be fair. What I was going to suggest to you today, and this is all new information that was presented as an option to you, was that we as your employer support you through the process. We would be there to make sure that you don't feel like, I don't know, like fish in a crocodile pound when you're interviewed by the CBSA. They're just doing their job as how the information got presented to me and Tom. Like they have a job to do. They're the equivalent of the Departmental Oversight Branch. So the Departmental Oversight Branch does internal reviews here within the department. This is what they were doing there. However, given the profile of this file, and I'm sure you've responded to audit questions before in your career as a public servant, this feels different. So I can just imagine, I could say they are a police force unto themselves. So I do not trust what they have to say, to be clear, is what I said. Okay, so in order to make you feel comfortable, what I'm going to suggest to Michelle is that one of us, management, sits with you through this process, because the way things were presented to me, despite what they wrote to you, it's an obligation.
You to pause it there. I think you have a lot more to say, but I do need to move on and try to keep some sense of balance here as well. If Ms. Yip has questions, she will come back to you, I'm sure. Suivant, c'est Madame Sinclair Degagné pour 2 minutes 30 secondes.
Up next is Ms. Sinclair Degagné for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Daly, can you hear me? Okay, but I did not hear you back. Were you contacted by the RCMP?
No, I have not been contacted by the RCMP.
So you referred to Ms. Dutt at multiple occasions. When Ms. Dutt, with whom the CBSA was supposed to have a contract, discovered finally that the company, Butler, was becoming a contracting company for GC Strategies, when Ms. Dutt had realized that her signature had been falsified, she reported this misconduct. It's, of course, illegal, forging someone's signature. Were you aware why this was not brought up? Of course, this was a criminal offense. As a supply officer, you should be aware that forging someone's signature is a criminal act. Why did you not bring this up at that point in time, Ms. Daly?
Well, you'd have to refer back to the timeline I was there. I was only at CBSA until July 2022, if not June 2022. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I'd have to go back to the OGO committee, when did Ms. Dutt raise that specifically to CBSA?
J'ai cette information-là.
I have that information here in front of me, if I can find it. Just a sec. So Ms. Dutt communicated that information. Just a second. It was in 2021, so you were there, and she communicated with you. Unless everything is just invented, but it would seem bizarre. So the first time this was mentioned was 27th of September 2021 about this misconduct. So at that point in time, you were there, and she communicated with you, Ms. Dutt. Why did you not bring this up, this misconduct? Because you were saying that it's not your problem that someone becomes a subcontractor, but without them knowing that this is happening, a signature has to be falsified. So it's up to you at that point in time to bring that up. Why did you not do that?
Well, first of all, I'd have to see the email that you're talking about. I don't recall receiving that specific email.
Madame Dutt a fait son témoignage il y a longtemps.
Ms. Dutt appeared before the OGO community a long time ago, but all of this information is publicly available. So we have two contradicting testimonies. You are saying that you remember this problem about Butler AI becoming a contractor without them knowing, but you did not signal the problem. You did not bring it up.
Well, that's not true. So let me just step back here, okay? Let me explain things as I recall them, okay? Because this seems to be confusing a lot of people. My role was senior administrator. I received an email from my executive director that Ms. Dutt had sent asking for payment of 2 deliverables for what had been delivered to CBSA Human Resources Branch. I called CBSA Finance to find out if Dalian, in joint venture with Cordex, which was the contractor on record, had actually been paid. They confirmed they had. I said, well, why aren't you paying the people on the task authorization? Oh, well, GC Strategies, I believe it was GC Strategies, I could be wrong, was, supposed to pay them. I contacted GC Strategies to make sure that they had the capacity and the fortitude to do the right thing and pay their subcontractor. Most PGs don't do that, just so you know. Because as Michael Mills had said at OGO, they don't get involved in payment of subcontractors. That's not right, okay? I like to make sure people who deliver things get paid. That was what I was doing.
Et voilà. Merci beaucoup. Suivant, c'est M. Desjardins. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Daly, I find several instances of your testimony today troubling or creating gaps in what is some of the issues pointed out by the Auditor General. The Auditor General herself has suggested that CBSA officials, including and potentially could be you yourself, especially named by Mr. Firth to be you, were involved directly in forged signatures and even instances of failed resumes or of resumes that were forged resumes for the purpose of ensuring that GC Strategies and any potential layers of subcontractors would be eligible for what was an IT contract that was presumably an important contract that was supposed to ensure that Canada and taxpayers got the best outcome possible. Was it ever a question in your mind that a two-person company like GC Strategies was maybe not the best fit for this? And did you ever at any point question how a two-person company in a basement could have even possibly been the prime contractor to such a massive project? Something isn't adding up.
So can I answer your question about TBIPs? Remember I was talking about the TBIPs catalog?
Yeah.
That is only available to PGs who have access to something called the TBIPs catalog, or the Centralized I think it's Professional Services System, CPSS. That is where the separation between people who create the catalog and those that should not be signing contracts for those same suppliers is part of this issue.
I understand that part.
And
so you're saying
I'm saying I had no access to that catalog.
What informed you? But exactly, I understand what you're saying. You're saying this catalog is the evidence to inform you why GC Strategies was the contractor, correct?
Oh, so I wouldn't know that GC Strategies was a two-person company. I wouldn't know that.
You just seen them on the list, and you said they're on the approved list. Somebody verified it. Therefore,
now that I had from Angela Durgan, who had to say, we're not doing anything with the sole source contract until we can provide.
So now that when a misconduct report was submitted to you by Bottler to suggest that, hey, GC Strategies isn't who they say they are, maybe they shouldn't be on this preferred contractor list, why is it then that you failed to ensure that there was a misconduct report that was actually investigated and pursued? And why did it result, rather than an investigation into who GC Strategies really is and how they got onto the TPIPS list, rather than what actually happened, which was the outright termination of Bottler when they tried to raise the alarm bells? Who directed you to do that, or was it you yourself?
So first of all, you're asking about the cancellation of the task authorization with Ritika Dutt and her partner. So that decision,
the result, rather than an investigation.
Or am I allowed to?
Yes, Ms. Daly, you have
That's
the floor.
question. I want you to answer that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm
Why
trying
is it
to.
that you decided to terminate the contract rather than ensure
contract.
there was a misconduct report when
Chair,
a misconduct
I'm trying to answer the question.
report was given to you. I need you to hear the question, Ms. Daly.
I'm trying to.
All right.
But you're not letting me. Did you hear what I said? You're interrupting
all right.
me. I
Mr.
reclaim my time,
Desjardins,
Chair,
just from
in
the
order
top.
to answer the question.
I appreciate that, Mr. Desjardins. There's just a bit of audio back and forth. Why don't you pose the question as clear as you can, and then we'll give Ms. Daly an opportunity to answer, and then I'm going to move on. Thank you.
When Bottler, which was an unknown, they claimed they were an unknown subcontractor, GC Strategies. When they came forward with allegations of misconduct, they raised that misconduct report with you. The result of them raising the misconduct report did not result in you initiating an investigation of that potential claim of misconduct. What in fact happened was Bottler AI's contract was terminated. That seems like retaliation for what is a very clear instance of someone trying to raise an issue of misconduct. Why is it that you decided not to ensure an investigation when what in fact happened was you decided to then now terminate instead?
To the initial request for payment. So the initial request for payment had attachments of correspondence between Miss Dutt and I believe other people. And I had no right as a PG, I have no right to interfere with what are business relationships outside of the Government of Canada contract. We're not allowed to do that. So therefore,
thank you.
Explain to misconducts happened.
Thank you. We can pick this up again, Ms. Desjardins. The answer might not be complete, but I've given you both time. We'll come back to this, I'm sure. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Communicate with Christian Firth of GC Strategies.
I honestly don't know. When a soldier is told to go and make something happen, but I can tell you most of what I corresponded with Mr. Firth, now that I know it's a two-person company, which I had no access to. No, but it explains the level of ineptitude in the very poor documentation received at the CBSA. Things like invoices, things like timesheets, things like, delays in responding to us. There's multiple things we had to coordinate for a package, and if I'm told this invoice came in, it's not right, I would have to reach out to whatever the supplier was to get it fixed.
And you would do that by phone or by email?
If phone or email, never in person.
Okay. So we've heard evidence about government officials receiving hospitality from Christian Firth. So not solicited, but him sending and arranging virtual whiskey tasting, sending whiskey to people's homes. Were you ever afforded any of that hospitality?
No.
And were you invited in your role to any dinners that were provided to any of your other colleagues in government? So we heard testimony that in some cases they met at bistros and coffee shops and steakhouses. Were you given any invitations to those events?
No.
And so you didn't partake in any of them?
No.
Did you know that any of these events were taking place?
No, if I had, I would have said something.
Are you aware now that your supervisors were taking part in that hospitality?
From testimony, yes.
When Mr. Firth appeared at the Government Operations Committee, he refused to name the individual that was helping him and GC Strategies to write their own contracts. That refusal to give the name was one of the reasons that he was found to be in contempt and saw the matter elevated to him being called to the bar of the House of Commons to answer questions. Why would he hide your name from Canadians in his testimony, knowing that he would be found in contempt?
That's a good question. It's kind of like the question I have about why am I being investigated to try and, give false testimony about two former bosses? Why am I being investigated and put on administrative leave? I didn't do anything wrong. I continue to go to work. I would ask that question of those in the CBSA management team those in the PSPC management team who decided to investigate me.
So what changed between his appearance at OGO and his appearance in the House when he refused to name you and then when he did name you?
I have no idea.
Do you agree that you are the correct person for him to have named in relation to them being assisted in creating that contract?
I did not have the expertise to know what an IT anything was. So if Mr. Firth sent me anything, it would have been forwarded on to IT services.
So who should, so the Auditor General made reference to GC Strategies having someone, having a government official write a contract, having assist GC Strategies in writing a contract that they were ultimately awarded. Who was it, if it wasn't you?
I don't know, but I want to tell you again, I'll reiterate what was in my statement. We went, there was myself, the manager of BTID DGO, and her administrative officer were sick and tired of the very poor documentation from GC Strategies. I want to make it very, very clear that we said, can we cancel this request for proposal? We did. We booked an MS Teams meeting. And we asked that GC Strategies not be awarded that.
So my last question. Do you think that you were singled out by CBSA officials to take the fall for this and that was communicated to Mr. Firth in between his appearance at OGO and his appearance in the House, and that's why your name was given to him? Ms. Daly, how would he even remember you if you'd only communicated one time, if your name wasn't given to him by your superiors in an attempt to clear their own names?
I don't know what people are up to. I don't get into this political back and forth. All I know is I dealt with Christian Firth on multiple occasions for incorrect invoices, not just me, CBSA, DGO, admin staff. This shows why there were so many problems as they're a two-person company. And you'd have to go back to TBIPS and how they do their catalog and their vetting to really say, is this the tip of the iceberg?
Thank you very much. Next up is Ms. Bradford. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please, Ms. Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the witness appearing today. I just want to clarify a few things that I find a little confusing. So, were you suspended, or you referred to that you were put on administrative leave? I just wonder, did you ask for administrative leave? Did they say you're going on?
I received an email from the Special Investigations Unit of PSPC on March 12th, and I was told I was under administration leave. Sorry, March 13th, by my former Director General, Lisanne Bolduc. Happy to provide the committee with a copy of that.
Now, was Cameron McDonald supervising your work?
No, he wasn't.
Okay. All right. And looking now at your interactions with Christian Firth, do you recall when the first time you came into contact with him was?
Angela Durgan.
And what was the first time you met, and what was the meeting pertaining to?
Well, first of all, there would be, I'd never met the man personally that I can recall. I don't remember meeting him. But this was in the time period of COVID. We were given instructions, as I was told, to see whether or not it was possible to put a sole source contract to address some sort of software requirement at the time. And I remember, getting something from Mr. Firth regarding rates, a rate card. But as I said to him, it has to go through PSPC's appropriate commodity team called TBIPS in order to be able to do anything. So I advised the IT group, the CBSA IT group, that everything has to go through CBSA procurement and then PSPC TBIPS. Angela Durgan, and again I have a copy of this email, Angela Durgan said she would have to check and see whether GC Strategies was on the pre-qualified list. They were. I have no access to that. So for me, that was the first I'd ever heard of GC Strategies was through Angela Durgan.
Now, Mr. Firth has provided testimony that he met with you prior to the contract being awarded to GC Strategies. And during that meeting, he provided 3 suggestions for requirements for the contract, which ended up having 220 requirements. Do you agree with that statement?
And I do not recall, and I'll keep going back to what I said, I do not recall any conversation of IT technical requirements from Mr. Firth. If Mr. Firth had given me anything, it would have been forwarded on to the IT department who sets the technical requirements.
Okay, and getting back to your leave, is it medical leave that you're on now, or just?
No, it is administrative leave, and that comes as a result of my former Director General, Lisanne Bolduc.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that for us. Now, because this is the Public Accounts Committee, I want to get back to the AG's report on ArriveCAN. You said that you've read the report. Do you agree with her findings and recommendations?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say that's why I go back to the October 2020 answer in the OPPO report from November 2021, which states the CBSA has a contract review board. In the contract review board, they are supposed to review the impact to the agency. That would mean planning for projects, planning for finance. That would mean more than one cost center to be set up. Does that make sense?
Yes. Were you interviewed by the AG's office?
No.
Okay, you weren't. And in reviewing the report, can you outline any things that you might have found concerning?
Well, I don't know if the AG has received all documentation related, such as my 2022 that I found on Reddit, the 2022 information about CBSA's presentation to the committees, the answer questions, things like, well, my office made the decision to go with GC Strategies. This was a public servant, and as a unionized employee, we're very concerned about this. The public service should be very, very concerned that their management team who make decisions and try to blame unionized members at a lower level for decisions made at the highest level is a real threat. It's a real reprisal, and I'm a walking example of that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daly. That is the time that ends the second round. I'm just going to suspend for 10 minutes, and we'll come right back. Thank you. Bring the hearings back into order, please. And just going to wait for people to appear on the screen. Yeah, I just see people popping on. I'll just wait another 10 seconds. All right, Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Ms. Daly, I want to do a deeper dive into the circumstances surrounding the CBSA interview. You referenced an audio tape that you're going to provide to the committee. I understand that there was a series of email exchanges as well that you've referenced. These email exchanges involve you and who else?
Well, I have them here. Can I pull them out? And then I'd be more accurate.
I want you to ultimately file all of those emails. Can you just identify the names of the people who are communicating with you?
Okay. Well, the people communicating with me were my Director General, Lisanne Bolduc, and Tom von Schoenberg.
Sorry?
Tom von Schoenberg, my Senior Director.
Yes.
So those were the people involved in communicating.
LaFleur.
Mr. LaFleur, you're correct, Mr. Brock. On December 7th, he sent me an invite for an optional as a witness to come.
Initial piece of communication?
Yes, December 7th.
Okay. In addition to the audio phone call, in addition to the emails, were there other phone calls that took place to get you at that particular interview that you did not take?
Yeah, I was shocked when I was like, I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I was, sorry.
You referenced some important details in that audio tape conversation between you and the DG. Are there other damning, more significant pieces of that conversation you want to share with us right now?
Certainly. My apologies, I just have to grab it. This is a conversation that Lizanne had with me. She said, I'll seek clarity on the mandatory versus non-mandatory. But before she says that, she says, and I think that you should feel comfortable having Tom or I present at that upcoming meeting. I think that would be a good idea for you as well. So I'll get back to Michelle. She's referring to Michelle Lafleur. I'll seek clarity on the mandatory versus non-mandatory, but like I said, I've received my own marching orders, and my feeling that he's probably received his own marching orders as well on his side as well.
So by inference, she's misleading you as to whether there's a confusion between optional and non-optional.
That's correct.
Right?
She said, I wasn't told it was optional on the tape.
You clearly had no choice.
I had no choice.
You were compelled to attend.
She told me I had no option.
Okay, let's talk about the interview itself. How long was it?
13 minutes.
The interview?
Oh, the interview with CBSA, you mean, right?
Yes.
It was 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. Where did it take place?
Virtually.
Virtually. Did you get a break?
Yes, I did.
What was the tone like in that particular 3.5 hour interview?
It was hostile.
Give me examples.
Well, the Marie-France Leduc, who was the manager or the acting manager, started off being confused that I wasn't procurement. She would throw random emails at me and read from them and not let me see them, and then say, well, what do you mean you're not procurement?
Okay. They had a narrative that you would not agree with. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and I think they were literally confused that I wasn't procurement.
Sure. Was that meeting recorded? Was that meeting transcribed?
It was
Can you tell us?
transcribed.
Was it recorded?
It would have been, yeah.
Did you get a copy of that recording?
No, I did not.
Okay. Tell me about were there any issues with the transcription of that interview?
At the end, and my sister attended with me because I had advised them I had just received cancer treatment 6 days before or 5 days before. And that's in writing, by the way.
Okay.
So they said to me, they said January 15th was the date of the meeting. And Cassandra Michon, who was the senior investigator on that, had very poor English, or she was trying to transcribe something that I did not say at the end of the meeting.
Clarify that?
Sure.
Okay. Can I move on?
Sure.
Do you have any information with respect to the allegations surrounding Min Doan deleting 4 years' worth of relevant emails?
I know nothing about that.
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Okay. You must have heard that in the press.
I heard it
Media?
at testimony.
Okay. You never dealt with Min Doan in your capacity at CBSA?
No.
Okay. The interview took place when?
January the
CBSA interview?
15th.
January 15th?
That's
Of
correct.
2024?
Correct.
When were you suspended?
March the 12th.
Okay. How were you suspended?
I received
Verbally or a letter?
I received a letter.
Do you have a letter? Copy
do.
of the letter? Will you submit that to the committee?
I will.
Okay. And what was the crux of the allegations against you?
May I read it?
Yes.
I like to read stuff so that people know that I'm actually.
Yes. Go ahead.
My apologies. If we could just give me a moment to look for it.
Mr. Brock, I'll allow this, but this will conclude your
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
your questioning. I will just give Ms. Daly a few seconds to find that.
Sorry, I'm looking for it.
Notes.
I've got a lot of paperwork here, so you'll have to bear with me. I apologize.
To committee?
I will. It
Okay.
essentially says that I did not adhere to the CBSA and PSPC codes of conduct for procurement. And I had something to the effect of, I'm reading this from memory, not adhered to the values and ethics of the public service. Those were the allegations.
Thank you. I think that will suffice. If Mr. Brock wants to make a point of it, we can come back to it. I believe Ms. Khalid, you're next for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Daly, for appearing here today. And I will just, at the outset, point out that we are not here as a tribunal to find charge or to find guilt in any way. We are trying to figure out what went wrong and how we can ensure that it doesn't go wrong again in the future. So, Ms. Daly, I'll start off by asking, who hired you?
My offer came from Tony Utano, but the CBSA...
What was his position?
He was an executive director.
Okay. And who will fire you, as you had indicated in your opening statement?
Who would fire me? Yeah. Well, that would probably be my deputy minister or my former director general. You see, in the policy on investigations, it's actually, as I said in my statement, the at-level manager or director who actually needs to start an investigation. So at Public Works, that would have been Lisanne Bolduc at the time.
Right. So you had also mentioned in your opening remarks that Minister Duclos, who was the minister responsible at the time, tried to do the right thing. Can you just elaborate on that? What exactly did you mean by that?
Referring to where Ms. Riza said in one of her committee meetings, I'm not sure if it was OGO or Public Accounts, you'd have to look it up, but I believe it was January, where she said she was asked a question specifically regarding when she had informed by, I think it was by Ms. Block who actually asked this, when did she inform the minister of, you know, when the ArriveCans thing, and she said it was like November or October of 2023 when he started. So he started in the summer, and the same month or a month later, he came out and said in the Globe and Mail, I believe it was, that, you know, we recognize there's a problem. We're trying to do something about it in the House of Commons. So that's where I'm getting this information from.
Thank you. And so help me understand, I mean, from the over 20 plus meetings and the increased politicization of this issue, I'm getting the vibe here that what's at issue here is how middle management is conducting themselves, and especially during the COVID time when things were very fluid and a lot of things needed to get done in a very short time. So, do you think that we need to micromanage our public service?
I think you need to take a good look at the TBIP's method of supply, and in fact, look at it from an auditor's standpoint. So I would suggest the Auditor General actually go into the professional services unit and look at how, because TBIPS was established in the Way Forward in 2005, from what I can read in a business journal that I have with me. It's an article from 2009 which says TBIPS needs to be reformed. We need to look at what we put in place before and reform it.
And how much of what has happened here, which is, if I'm going to put it into context, which is that there was too much money spent on an app to try to help people to be able to be mobile during COVID in a safe way. How and a lot of that led to overspending. Where do you think the accountability really lies with that spending of that money? And we realize that no ministers signed off on any of these contracts. Where is that accountability?
I go to the Financial Administration Act. Where does it come down from?
And do you think that ministers need to sign off on every single contract that the public service, who we rely on significantly, to be able to do their work? Do ministers need to sign off on every single contract, i.e. micromanage how our public service does their work?
Oh, I think you need to take a look at what is obviously, and this goes back to the OGO meeting where PSPC, Madame Poulain, had indicated there could be a widespread problem in the government with different departments impacted by the poor way that methods of supply are set up. It's the methods of supply.
Thanks for that. So it seems to me, like based on your testimony today, that everyone, I mean, like, you know, in public service seems to be tripping over themselves to find out who is the person most responsible. The Conservatives are trying to tie this in some way to a minister or to some political operative here. In your point of view, do you think that the elected officials need to have more oversight on these contracts and procurement in general, so that we can prevent these kind of acts from happening in the future?
Well, I'll tell you what I understood from Public Works. They, I believe, either have put in place a chief procurement officer. Maybe that should be considered as an independent office, not in finance, but working with finance as a separate entity. And so there should be, part of this is your financial management system and people knowing what goes in and how it's done. We in the government love red tape. We don't do the how-to guides or this is the process of what this means. We don't do enough of that. And yet we ask through Treasury Board as the employer for reports about what we're doing. We make it so hard on ourselves to do the simplest things when we could have oversight bodies watching what people are asking for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
I have one more question,
Ms.
Chair,
Glade,
if you would oblige me.
Your time is up, but there's more slots coming for you and your members, so we'll come back. And it did go well over, Ms. Khalid. Madame Sinclair-Degagné, encore une fois, 2 minutes 30 secondes.
Ms. Sinclair-Degagné, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Daly, a question, yes or no answer, please. Did you threaten, on behalf of Canada, Ms. Dutt from Butler, to send all the information, all the documents, and all the proof of misconduct in her possession, to send everything to the CBSA or GC Strategies?
No. What we did was we asked for everything associated with the 2 deliverables because of the turnover in project representatives from the Human Resources branch. They kept part of the issue for for Butler was that they were complaining there weren't people there to get the deliverables done. So let me be very clear. You could find that with documentation, emails. But what we did was we did ask for everything associated as part of the terms and conditions laid out in 2035, part of the high complexity template and the supply acquisition clauses and conditions, where Canada has the right to audit and ask for those documents.
Pourquoi avez-vous avoir demandé tous les documents, dont les preuves d'inconduite?
Why did you ask for all the documents, including evidence of misconduct? Because under normal circumstances, what needed to have been done was to sound the alarm and report the problem to your superiors, who would then take it to the relevant places. And why did you, instead of doing that, ask for all the documents? Why did you behave in this way? Did someone ask you to proceed in this manner, or did it come from yourself directly?
First of all, I corresponded with Ms. Dutt through email. I had to do what she had requested, was she was looking for my support to find out when the Human Resources branch and the work to continue so she could deliver her deliverables. I was told, no, I'm trying to lead up to you. I'm trying to explain that.
I'm sorry, I have limited time, but you're not answering my question. My question is, why did you not sound the alarm, even though there was evidence of misconduct, and instead you asked for this information to be provided to the people who were accused of the misconduct? That makes no sense, Ms. Daly.
So again, I'll refer back to my role as a senior advisor. We in the government must adhere to the terms and conditions of contracts. Do you agree? No, but I'm.
That is not my question.
We have a duty to only correspond with the contract of record, which in this case was Dalian in joint venture with Corridex.
C'est justement ce que Butler vous reprochait. Ils étaient censés être en contrat directement avec l'agence.
That is what Butler accused you of. They were directly in contact with CBSA, and their signature was forged, and they were made subcontractors in this manner. And that was the first accusation of misconduct from Butler AR. Exactly that. So that is not normal. That should have been brought up the chain to your superiors when this accusation of misconduct was made. Ms. Daly, I believe you're telling the truth on a lot of things, but there were instances of misconduct, and either you were told to shut your eyes, or you did it yourself, and you did not sound the alarm as it was your duty to do. What happened?
First of all, if they had said that they had forged resumes, I don't remember receiving any correspondence from Butler AI in 2021 about forged resumes. So I want to be clear about that. I'm not even sure that that is what they said at committee, but I could be wrong. Second, if they had said it was a forged resume to me, I would have gone back to the contractor and said, what is going on here? The contractor, Dalian and Joint Venture, said they received the resumes from their subcontractor in committee. So I don't know what their business is between other suppliers when they make arrangements. It's not my business. My business is to make sure.
Voilà. Thank you, Ms. Daly. Just a note, Ms. Daly, if you could just lean back a little bit and
sorry.
not it just creates a little bit of audio difficulty for the translators. Madame Sinclair-Degnan, vous aurez encore une autre chance.
Ms. Sinclair-Degnan, you will once again have another round. And up next, we have Mr. Desjardins.
You'll have another opportunity after this one as well. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to continue on the line of questioning from my previous round related to the misconduct. I agree with you, Ms. Daly, largely in your comments, but I don't agree with your summation of what qualifies a misconduct and what your responsibility is, whether you're, as you quoted yourself, as a low-level public servant, medium public servant, or even a deputy minister. The responsibilities under Section 5 of the CBSA policy requires that if any instance of a misconduct report is made to any persons under the policy, including you in your position, should be reported. You failed to report it. I'm not saying that you're responsible, of course, for the gross negligence that took place, whether at TBIPs, which I agree with you. We need to conduct a very serious review of TBIPs and how companies like GC Strategies, a two-person company, could have gotten on that list. I'm saying that this is a very good example of a systemic corruption where small pieces and the firewalls between them have isolated public servants to the position of not knowing whether or not something is misconduct. Because it's clear from your testimony today that you don't actually see this as a level of misconduct. Failing to report a serious allegation to a superior didn't, in your mind, meet the threshold to report a misconduct, which is not your fault alone. It's the fault of your managers. It's the fault of the managers above them. And ultimately, it's the fault of what's ever happening at TBIPs that would have initiated this level of corruption. And so that is my summation of what we've heard today. And I fully take your recommendation that there should be a serious review of the TBIPs list, how suppliers got on that list. But there also has to be accountability, Ms. Daly, to the fact that there are policies in place that govern public servants, all public servants, that in the instance of a serious allegation like that of a contractor not knowing they're a subcontractor and only finding that out after raising the alarm that I'm not getting paid, directly resulted in this issue why you're here today. And so I fully appreciate your testimony, Ms. Daly. Your recommendations I also appreciate. But what I ask is that this committee take serious consideration as to how GC Strategies was able to continue in this relationship when misconduct was in fact raised and the policy was failed to be adhered to. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree that everybody should get paid for the work they do, and honest efforts were made with the contractor of record, which is Dalian and Joint Venture. And this was offered to Ms. Dudd, if I'm not mistaken, and you'd have to go back to what I left on the GC docs.
Did you confirm any of that detail?
Sorry?
Did you confirm any of the details as to whether or not GC Strategies had subcontractors?
Not, like, honestly, it's way above my pay grade. The people working with GC Strategies were the CBSA IT people.
Thank you
The
very much.
policy you do know counts subcontractors.
Mr. Disley, I will come back to you. You'll have another opportunity. The time is ended. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Ms. Daly, have you reviewed the testimony of the government officials related to ArriveCan? What about Cameron McDonald? Are you familiar with his testimony?
Yes.
Do you find it to be credible?
Yes.
What about Anthony Utano?
Yes.
CBSA President Aaron O'Gorman?
Well, I do find it interesting that in January 18th committee, where Ms. O'Gorman was asked by Ms. Mignola, I believe, of the bloc, that do you know of any person that is being, investigated or reprised against for whistleblowing? And she said she did not know, if I'm paraphrasing here, but Ms. O'Gorman made that statement. And yet here I sit.
We'll circle back to that. Former CBSA President John Osowski also testified. Are you familiar with his testimony?
I saw one of his testimony.
And did you find it to be truthful?
I really don't know.
So Mr. McDonald told committee that the testimony of both the current and former CBSA presidents were not truthful. The testimony of Ms. O'Gorman and the testimony of Mr. Osowski. Do you have any further insight other than your personal example of a whistleblower reprisal that's being exacted against you?
I have heard at committee that there is a CBSA employee currently being put under investigation, something to do with missing emails.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't know more than that.
Yeah, Mindone. Okay.
Okay.
And it's your and that relates to Ms. O'Gorman's testimony and its veracity?
Well, if you're an auditor, and I'm just going to speak to what I am familiar with being audited, you have to separate duties and responsibilities. Like contracting security is not in the same group as buyers. If you mix the two, like mergers and acquisitions with stockbrokers, you get insider trading. If she wasn't a part of the investigation, my question, instead of assuming anything, because I don't know Ms. O'Gorman and I don't know what's going on, but if she isn't a part of the investigation, how would she know or not know if people are being reprised against? I'm just asking the question.
So you mentioned earlier that you were just a soldier accepting your marching orders. So where did those orders come from? Did they come from Mr. McDonald, Mr. Utano? Did they come from Ms. O'Gorman or Mr. Osowski? Did they come from a deputy minister? Did they come from the minister? Where did they come from?
Usually when unionized employees are working, they'll get it either from their manager, their director, their colleagues. In my case, I worked with CBSA IT managers, CBSA IT directors. I dealt with them all, and I just put into place a package that was sent over from their IT technical requirements over to CBSA procurement.
And so what would be the most senior level that would have given you direction on any of these matters?
Director, senior director, or executive director, sorry.
Okay. And who do they report to?
Probably the DG.
And who does the DG report to?
The VP of that branch.
And the VP to the president, and the president to?
To a minister.
To the minister. Oh, okay. So I found it so interesting that the Liberals have put forward this narrative that all of this $60 million fiasco, is the fault of the public service, and that some would like to say that it's your fault.
Point of order.
Yes, Ms. Khalid.
I can't wait.
Point of order.
I can't wait.
Oh, just yes, Ms. Khalid.
Sorry, Chair. You know what? Mr. Barrett can continue.
Pardon me?
She's withdrawn.
Okay, withdrawing. Okay, thank you.
I'll take it back,
All right,
Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett, you've got 40 seconds left.
Delighted she found a copy of the Green Book.
Sorry,
These
Chair. I'm not sure why Mr. Barrett needs to make such snide remarks.
Is this the point of
Thank you.
order?
All right.
Comments?
Let's.
Maybe she didn't find a copy
Ladies
of the
and
Green Book
gentlemen,
after
we're
all.
getting through the meeting, and if we stay on track, we'll have everyone out of here very shortly. Mr. Barrett, you've got 40 seconds.
Fascinating that Ms. Khalid wants to paint a picture.
So no,
Ms.
you
Daly.
can't. No, Mr. Chair. He can't be representing me at
Miss
this
Khalid.
point.
Is she new?
Miss Khalid, Mr. Barrett can tee off his questions to the witness however he likes, and you were the one who stuck your neck out a little bit. And while I appreciate you withdrawing it, your point of order, Mr. Barrett has the floor for a short 40 seconds, which is longer than we've been discussing this point. Mr. Barrett, 40 seconds, please.
So Ms. Khalid wanted to make the point, Ms. Daly, that it's just the public servants like yourself who are solely responsible for this.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes,
I
I am.
just witnessed Miss Khalid, under her breath, use the words "F-U," and I'm not going to use the full term for that, but it was very, very clear to me. I can look at her literally within 5 feet. I'm asking her to reflect on what she said, apologize, and withdraw.
Ms. Khalid, I did not catch anything. Do you have any comment you'd like to make?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you want to consult Hansard or what the testimony has been or what's been recorded, but I think Mr. Brock is getting a little bit ahead of himself.
Okay, Mr. Brock, your member has the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's warm in Ottawa. This meeting has been proceeding exceptionally well. I would like to get through Ms. Daly's testimony, who's come in here today to talk about her experience. Mr. Barrett, you have 30 seconds. The floor is yours.
Let's back it up to the start of the interruptions, and we'll take the full 45. So, Ms. Daly, Ms. Khalid has gone to great pains to try and say that it's not her government that's responsible for the $60 million fiasco of Arrive scam, which saw Liberal insiders getting paid while Canadians had to pay for it. They want to lay the blame at the feet of yourself and other public servants at your level. Is the minister not ultimately responsible for what happens in the department, yes or no?
A minister is accountable to Parliament for the actions of their department or agency.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daly. And that's, Chair, exactly why this Liberal government needs to be held accountable, and that's what our function is here, even if Ms. Khalid and her Liberal colleagues don't like it.
That was quite a long
Thank you
stretch
very
there.
much. We will now turn to Ms. Hepner. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank our witness, Ms. Daly, for being here with us. I know this has been a bit of a difficult experience for you overall. You talked about being humiliated and publicly called out. You talked about dealing with cancer, and so I just want to appreciate that you're here giving us testimony despite what a trying time it's been. You mentioned also that you believe you are being investigated with regards to the code of conduct under the procurement process. Could you describe for us what exactly, or maybe just summarize what that code of conduct says?
I couldn't off the top of my head. It has to follow along the lines of integrity, client service, that sort of thing that PGs must adhere to. I wasn't in a PG role at that point. I was a senior advisor in an administrative role.
Okay. So would you be able to tell us whether there are any values or ethics training that's available to officers or to staff members in the procurement office?
There used to be, Treasury Board used to have a procurement, an actual training program for procurement designation. So the Treasury Board may want to look at that again. I believe they disbanded that a year ago, 2 years ago, 2021 maybe. So it might be worth insisting it become a mandatory program, not just for PGs, though. I want to make this clear, not just for PGs. It would be good for managers who actually deal with contracting, because a lot of what we learn as PGs is most of the issues are in the contract management stage.
So you wouldn't have had any, you personally wouldn't have had any values or ethics training?
I've had values and ethics training every year.
Okay. And is it valuable, would you say?
I would say that some people who have issues with the values and ethics should take an in-class version of that.
Do you think public services should have more authority or oversight? You mentioned a couple of times in your testimony that you didn't give advice, but do you think you should have been able to give advice?
It wasn't my role. They had opportunities. Everybody within CBSA has the ability to go to CBSA procurement to ask questions.
Could you explain to this committee what ghost contracting is? If
I've never heard of that before. That doesn't exist.
Thank you. And what are the rules around subcontracting as far as you're aware?
That's a business rule, and this is the contention is, industry, if they decide to go into business together, that is outside the purview of the Government of Canada. Maybe the Government of Canada might consider looking at that as an issue for procurement and consulting industry on how best to manage that, since this is contentious.
Right. You have mentioned a couple of times, and I think you've given us a little bit of insight into the fact that TBIPs, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, I'm sorry, I don't know all these acronyms.
It's the IT professional services. So right now, just so we're clear, task-based informatics professional services are task-based contracts. They are pre-qualified every year. There's a problem, number one. If you were to have audit processes like in committee, there has been raised, I think it was Mr. Genuous, actually raised, with ISC, or Indigenous Services Canada, a question about consultation about Indigenous firms, which is a big thing for procurement, and I truly believe it is very, very important. Then there should be a checklist and an audit of those firms that the Indigenous organizations are involved with in the consult to establish it, and how. Sure. Sorry.
What do you think it would? No. That's great insight. And what do you think it would take to make those reforms? Is this something that can be done quickly? Is it something that can be done cheaply, or is this going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort?
You've got a lot of different people not talking to each other, and a way forward, and I'll use that as former government, way forward would be people start talking to each other, working on projects specifically geared with a terms of reference. A terms of reference would be established for things like, oh, we're having a problem with the Indigenous firms being confirmed as Indigenous firms. What would Indigenous organizations want to see from Indigenous procurement? Then you'd have Indigenous companies on that committee. We don't do enough of a check-in to see what's going on. And when we do, we don't ask the right questions.
Thank you very much. Beginning the last round, Mr. Genuous, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Ms. Daly had mentioned previously that her interview with investigators was recorded, but that she has not received a copy. It seems that that is a crucial piece of evidence. So first off, if there's agreement, I'd like the committee to order a copy of that recording from the government. So is there agreement to do that, Chair?
I'll just pause the clock here. You're asking for
agreement to order from the government the a copy of the recording that's been referred to as part of the investigation involving Ms. Daly. That's been referred to frequently. I saw nods all around, I think, so.
Mr. Genuis, yeah, I mean, if you're posing a motion, you can do that. Let's get the testimony from Mrs. Daly, and we can swing back around that. If you want to put forward a motion, you can. But
this is normal process. We've asked for a lot of documents.
Well, I see heads shaking all over the place.
From who? Who's shaking their heads?
Do you want a roll call vote, Mr. Genuis? You've got 4 minutes, 40 seconds in your time. Go.
Sure, we'll take a vote. I'm happy to take a vote.
Sorry, Chair, we don't know what we're voting on, so we'd love to see a motion.
Miss Genuis, Miss Clay, there is no vote. I paused the clock. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor. If you're moving a motion to get documents, you can do so.
Okay. Is there agreement of the committee to order that recording? If there's agreement of the committee, we don't have a problem. But if
point of order, Chair. The witness has already volunteered to offer the information.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, she doesn't have this. We're talking about the recording of her interview that she does not have that the government has. So we need to request this information from the government, not from her.
Well, Ms. Khalid, yes.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not exactly sure what recording we're talking about. So if Mr. Genuis can be more clear in a written motion, I'd be more than happy to review it and provide my support or the lack thereof.
Ms. Genuis,
but I do need to see it.
Yeah, Ms. Genuis, you do not have consent. You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds to go. Over to you, please.
Okay. With all due respect to my Liberal colleagues, I think it's pretty clear what recording we're talking about. It's been repeatedly referred to in these hearings, and Ms. Callie doesn't want that produced. We'll certainly be following up on that. And she doesn't.
Sorry, Chair, I take exception to being named.
Okay, Mr. Genuis, I've stopped the clock. That's Ms. Khalid, you can take exception. There's another government spot remaining.
Chair.
Ms. Khalid,
Point of order, Chair.
What is your point of order?
Chair. My point of order is specifically with respect to following procedure that you have outlined and Mr. Genuis not continuing to follow it. And I would appreciate if you could ensure that Mr. Genuis does follow
that is not a point of order. I made my ruling. I think it was one the committee would broadly agree with. Mr. Genuis has the floor. If he wants, he can now. It's his comments, and your side will have an opportunity to respond to Mr. Genuis afterwards, and whoever does that can address it. And that person will have the floor, and I will do my best to keep Mr. Genuis from interrupting that person. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 4 minutes and just under 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have seen throughout how Ms. Khalid has been repeatedly unruly, trying to disrupt this investigation into Liberal corruption, and I think that's revealing. And I'll press on here. To Ms. Daly, you had talked about being under investigation. When did it become public that you were under investigation?
It never became public that I was under investigation.
I suppose until today.
You got it.
Okay. So the fact that Christian Firth would have named you in the House of Commons might suggest he had access to information about whether you were under investigation, or it might not. But it underlines sort of the strangeness of the fact that he named you a relatively more junior employee. Now, we've got an internal investigator at CBSA who's investigating the same situation. That internal investigator reports within the CBSI hierarchy and up through the minister. They're not independent, and that's one of the concerns that we've raised is the lack of independence for this investigation, that investigator reports to people who they might well potentially be investigating. Is this, just for clarity, is this the same person that's investigating you as well?
No. So there's two things. There was the witness request from Michel Lafleur, who was the CBSA, I think he's an executive director over there of the investigations unit. The second is another director of the special investigations unit at PSPC. But the letter to me indicated both CBSA and PSPC of me not adhering to the procurement code of conduct for both agencies.
Okay, thank you. Now, just going back, Cameron McDonald's testimony last year, at the end of last year, he said that, quote, on August 28, 2023, I received a call from Mindone telling me that Minister Marco Mendicino wanted someone's head on a platter. Minister Mendicino wanted someone's head on a platter. Based on what we've heard today, Ms. Daly, it does look like someone has proposed your head to be the one on the platter. Now, for all I know, you may have done things wrong. I don't really know, but you are relatively junior compared to most of the officials that have come before this committee. And unlike many other officials, you were not given gifts, hospitality, anything like that. While Christian Firth lavished senior government officials who were involved in decision-making with all kinds of apparent gifts, and presumably he had reasons for doing so, yet he gave you nothing, that you were the beneficiary of none of this hospitality, and then he out of the blue accuses you of being the one involved in discussing technical requirements on April 17th. The whole thing looks very odd, frankly, very rotten, and we're continuing to try to get answers from this corruption scandal. Minister Mendicino wants a head on a platter. What we're looking for is answers. And yet people who are frank and try to give answers seem to be subject to retaliation. So in that light, Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose a motion in light of the fact that we haven't gotten agreement to do these things more consensually. The motion is that in light of the testimony and evidence provided by Diane Daly, the committee order the production of the recording, which Ms. Daly referenced in her testimony, and call the following people to appear before the committee on ArriveCan, and particularly to respond to the new information Ms. Daly has presented: Lizanne Bolduc, Tom von Schoenberg, Ariane Reza, Christian Firth, and Aaron O'Gorman. So I've read that motion out, and I will send the slightly revised version.
Yeah, Mr. Jennings, could you send
in
that motion, and we will. I believe you already have a translated copy, but you have made some changes to it. Could you please send that in right away? And I'm going to send it right away, Ms. Shanahan, and I'm going to suspend. But send it right away, Ms. Jennings. I'm going to suspend for a few minutes.
Thanks.
Hearing back into session, the motion has been sent around. Mr. Genuis, do you want to speak to it again briefly? If not, I'm going to turn to other members who have signaled a willingness to or a desire to speak to it.
Yeah, Chair, I'll make a few comments about it. Thank you for the opportunity. So this is a motion following Ms. Daly's testimony, explosive testimony today, which seeks to invite people that her testimony implicates or addresses to come before this committee and respond to the important points she makes. It's also about seeking material information that we need as part of our investigation. So here is the context as I see it. What are we trying to do here at Public Accounts? This committee is looking for the truth. We want to get accurate information to get to the bottom of what happened in the Arrive Scam affair. And we have clearly different members or factions within senior public service who are criticizing each other, accusing each other of lying, of covering up information, of trying to cover people at the political level, et cetera. We have these very serious accusations flying back and forth between senior officials within the Trudeau government. It's all a mess. Money's been wasted, but there are accusations of intimidation, of cover-up, of reprisal that this committee has to get to the bottom of. So this compounds the concern about the Arrive Scam affair itself, the tens of millions of dollars that were spent, the broken system of government contracting, but also the lying, the corruption, the cover-ups, the reprisals, and the accusations back and forth between different officials to that effect. Ms. Daly has had the finger pointed at her. She's come back and provided a number of points to counter that, including evidence about various senior officials and things they have said to her. And also she's referenced a recording, a lengthy recording involving her and people that were investigating her. And I think that recording is critical for us understanding whether or not she's faced intimidation, the tone of that, the expectations. What she's told us as a committee is that she was expected to point the finger at Mr. McDonald and Utano. When she didn't do that, then that led to a kind of aggression and pressure. We need to hear that recording to get to the bottom of whether or not her testimony in this regard is credible or not. Here's how I see the process having unfolded. On November the 7th, Mr. McDonald and Utano are before OGO. At that time, they delivered critical testimony of the government. They called leading government witnesses liars. They gave scathing testimony, and they identified that as part of the response to the ArriveCan affair, Minister Mendicino had been seeking someone's head on a platter. He wanted someone's head on a platter. So later that month, these two, Mr. McDonald and Utano, get letters indicating further investigation for bad behavior right after their committee testimony, strikingly, and they're later suspended without pay. So Ms. Daly is brought in December. She is, according to her testimony, asked to point the fingers at Mr. McDonald and Utano. She says no. And later that month, they start investigating her. So now you have another public servant, a third, who's under investigation, who appears to be brought under investigation in the same month where they were refusing to play ball with the government's narrative. So this raises big questions. February 12th, the Auditor General puts out her scathing report on the ArriveScam affair, in which she says, among other things, that GC Strategies worked with government officials discussing the specifications of a contract they would then bid on, and obviously that's a problem. Christian Firth comes to OGO on March the 13th. He refuses to say who he sat down with, which officials were being referenced in the Auditor General's point, and he is so committed to refusing to give that information that he is called to the bar, admonished in order to give responses, and this brings us to late April 17th. At that point, he readily gives the name of Diane Daly, a relatively junior public servant who already is under investigation, although he's not supposed to know she's under investigation. So the whole thing raises the question, why did Mr. Firth give Diane Daly's name at that point? Now, maybe he just, after having covered up for so long, he finally decided to do the right thing. That's one explanation. He just decided at that point he was going to do the right thing. But another possible explanation is that Mr. Firth had decided to support the Liberal government's efforts to pin the blame for the ArriveScam fiasco on a few officials while absolving others. That he was supporting efforts to help achieve Mr. Mendicino's sought-after head on a platter by facilitating efforts of some in government to point the blame at other senior officials and effectively try to cauterize the wound to keep the discussion from actually digging all the way through to the answers. So this really exposes a sharp division among senior public servants about who is responsible. And I am, for I think obvious reasons, deeply suspicious of anything and everything that Christian Firth has said to committee in the House and in public. And I certainly don't think we should take at face value his claims about Ms. Daly. I think we need to investigate them further, which is why in the interest of answering the questions we need answered, in the interest of getting to the truth, I put forward this motion to bring in key witnesses who can respond to Ms. Daly's testimony, and also getting that recording. I think this should be a fairly simple matter. This is about getting to the truth, and these witnesses and that recording will allow this committee to get to the truth. Was Ms. Daly, in fact, someone that was deeper into this than her testimony suggests, or are other people within this Liberal government trying to point the finger at her to protect themselves from blame splashing back on them? We want to get to the truth, and this motion will help us do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Genuis. I am going to turn now to Ms. Shanahan. I am also liken myself to the European football referee. The clock is ticking here. Ms. Shanahan, you do have the floor. There's no limit to how long you have to speak, but if you get my hint, I would like to hear from people before the clock does run out. Over to you, please, Ms. Shanahan.
Chair, your hint is well taken. Thank you very much, because I was looking forward to my speaking slot in this meeting, and but here we are speaking to this motion. But I would like to just refer to if there, there's been talk of a narrative, that there's a narrative and that it's a liberal narrative, that it's a government narrative, and so on. And I'm just wondering if the witness is aware. She is an experienced civil servant, and I was going to ask her how she felt about her testimony, which is heartfelt, which has been very detailed, of which I still had questions regarding some of the responses, dates, and conversations that didn't seem to line up, and I was looking for clarity on those responses, and yet I wonder how the witness feels about her testimony being used to basically be a Twitter feed for members of the official opposition. And I just say that if that's the case, if the witness's name is dragged into that kind of partisan narrative, that I deeply regret that has happened. But I think the witness, as an experienced civil servant, can see what has been going on here today. That being said, regarding this motion, which is one that I also have difficulty understanding, because public accounts, we're not an investigative body. We're certainly not an investigative body as to any into deep dives into wrongdoing. That is the work of the Auditor General. We review the reports of the Auditor General, and then we go into detail about those reports, which is what we have been doing here, even though at many times, actually, it's quite redundant, the testimony that we hear and the hearings that have been called for. This topic, what we have heard today by the witness, is already part of an internal investigation, and I am very reluctant, and I wonder if the witness feels the same way, that we would interfere with that investigation. I don't know how it would be helpful, and as for Christian Firth, who has not appeared before this committee, but which we've seen much of his testimony, both in OGO and in the House, I'm not sure what else that we can get from him. So it's very weird that we are here today, very bizarre, going down this rabbit hole and subjecting, quite honestly, the witness, who has been forthright and is now apparently being accused of not being forthcoming in her testimony here today. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Daly, those questions are all rhetorical. Once we move into a motion, we debate the motion, and questions are not posed to the witness. On that, because I am running out of time, I do want to thank you, Ms. Daly, for your testimony and participation in relation to the study report when arrived. You can send any information that was either requested from you today that you agreed to surrender to the clerk, and any questions you might have about how to do that can go to the clerk as well. I'm going to turn now back to the motion at hand. Ms. Daly, you're welcome. You can remain there, or you can gather up your things and excuse yourself if you like. The choice is yours. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to Mr. Desjardins for some comments on this motion. Again, recognizing that we are pressed for time. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'll attempt to be brief. I agree with the motion. Before Ms. Daly leaves, however, I was wondering if maybe you could pose a question on behalf of our committee for us to enhance this motion. In the testimony that was presented today, several times did Ms. Daly mention a very credible problem within the public service that I feel our committee could largely get answers to, related to the TBIPS program and that verified list, and whoever operates that list, and how persons like a two-person company in a basement of GC Strategies could have even gotten onto a list of preferred or preferable contractors. Ms. Daly's testimony did highlight that as a credible issue related to the ongoing systemic corruption that does exist. And so I'd like to see if we can get a friendly agreement by the mover to include, I'm not trying to exclude anything, I'm trying to include another representative in the list of witnesses. If Ms. Daly has a recommendation as to who that person is, or otherwise, I just ask the clerk to include the highest ranking public servant in the TBIPS program to also bear witness to our questions, if that's possible. Mr. Chair, is my first point.
Sure, I'm going to address that, and I'll come right back to Mr. Desjardins. Ms. Daly is here. She's heard your request. If she would like to submit something in writing, I will allow that, but I'm not going to turn to her because that violates the motion debate where we're at now. So I go back to you, Mr. Desjardins, but Ms. Daly, should you wish to respond to Ms. Daly, should you wish to respond to Mr. Desjardins' question, you can do so overnight in writing if you like. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to just thank my colleagues for their time today and their good questions. I'd implore that we vote in favor of this motion. There's reasonable grounds to suggest that there is more information that's been brought to light that requires proper testimony and proper questioning, particularly to those witnesses that have not yet been present. I recognize there could be some debate amongst my Liberal and Conservative colleagues as to the list itself, but I implore you to ignore the obvious issues that could be presented both in schedule and time to having that many witnesses present. But I do, in fact, think for the purpose of good governance and our role here in public accounts, that there is credible reason for us to invite these witnesses again. I just want to mention my portion of the amendment I'm requesting as a friendly amendment, and I think Mr. Genuis, you would agree that having a representative from TBIPS would be important to the continuation. Okay. That was part of the included information that was made by the testimony today. Ms. Daly did present and fairly presented a very credible and important assertion that there ought to be relevant investigation to how groups like GC Strategies and others could have even been made a preferable contractor. And I find credibility in that proposition of question. And I think it's worth us asking TBIPS in order for us to better understand how, in fact, GC Strategies got through the door. My hope is that we can find unanimous consent to do that. Mr. Chair, I seek your advice as to whether or not we could do that by way of consent of the mover rather than having to have an amendment in a debate. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm afraid normally I would perhaps say yes, but given the time constraint I am under, and I would like to hear from Madame Sinclair-Dingé. Ms. Clade, I was communicating with Madame Sinclair-Dingé online before she put her hand up. I'd like to finish with her, and then I'm going to adjourn the meeting because I am out of time. So, Madame Sinclair-Dingé, in the meantime, Mr. Desjardins, you can consult with Mr. Genuis. Madame Sinclair-Dingé, you have the floor, please. Sure.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais tenter de...
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to make this quick so that we don't exhaust our resources past the time that's remaining. I am in favor of this motion and the amendment proposed by Mr. Desjardins when it comes to the presence of a high-ranking civil servant in charge of the program that has been mentioned multiple times here, which also has shown significant gaps in procurement at the federal government level. There is one aspect, however, which seems a bit inappropriate to me, is to have Mr. Firth back again. I think we came to the very end of his testimony at committee or at the House of Commons, so I would recommend two things. So I will have an amendment too. So the first one is to change Ms. Lisanne Bolduc's name. There's a typo in their name. I think that would be an easy fix. And the second one would be about Mr. Firth. I don't think we can extract anything more than from another appearance. I'm out of resources. This meeting is adjourned. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 10 a.m.